Xin chào mừng quý vị và các bạn đến với chương trình Tôi về Việt Nam trên kênh truyền hình FBNC. Và khách mời của tôi ngày hôm nay là giáo sư Soren Kirchner, hiện là giảng viên MBA của Đại học Kirchner và Trung tâm Đào tạo Quốc tế thuộc Đại học Quốc gia Thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, đồng thời là nghiên cứu sinh của Trung tâm Nghiên cứu Kinh tế và Chính sách Đại học Kinh tế Đại học Quốc gia Hà Nội. Hi, Mr. Kirchner. Thank you so much for coming to our program.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. So what brought you to Vietnam?
Well, Asia's where the action is, and Vietnam is small enough to make a bigger impact as compared to a place like China, some other place like that.
What have you done before that?
Before that, I was almost 20 years in the software marketing business,
Software marketing.
and direct marketing for software, so the direct marketing space. I started out teaching when I was 27 years old, back when I had a lot of hair, and I was very young,
happened, man?
just out of grad school. I was very young, and I was teaching a course called Consumer Behavior at a place called Memphis State University.
Okay.
It's in Tennessee. Now it's called University of Memphis. It's a state-owned school, accredited school. And I realized that I had no business teaching people marketing, having never done it. So I decided to go into the job world, and I learned it for some years. And I didn't start teaching again until I was 44, having had over 15 years experience doing sales management, marketing management.
Okay.
But I felt more comfortable doing it at that point rather than when I was a kid, which is what I was. And I was honest enough with myself to know that I had no business teaching people something that I'd never really done, except read in a book. And so I think that if you're teaching something, it should be something you've done successfully.
Sure.
The best teacher is one who has done it or can do it and can correct you. If they've never done it, how can you teach it? If I want to teach you how to drive a car, and I can't drive a car, that's kind of silly.
Sure.
And the way to teach you to drive a car is get you in a car,
Yeah.
not in a classroom to talk. Okay, theory of steering wheels.
All right. So your upcoming book, the 123 Strategy for Prosperity for Vietnam. Tell me about it.
Well, been here for almost 7 years, and many students, of course, will come to you and say, you know, what should we do? What should we do? What should Vietnam do? And I had a lot of time to read and a lot of time to think about it. And I finally put it together in a 1-2-3 strategy that is not easy, but it's simple. And to my knowledge, no one has put it together before. So I decided to write this as a book. And the first strategy, it's 1-2-3. Number one is higher quality goods, which will raise the export value.
Oh, so 123 is like 3 strategies for Vietnam.
It's a 1-2-3 strategy built in one and done at the same time will bring Vietnam into prosperity quickest.
And the first one is
higher quality. So they make higher quality products and sell them at a higher price, and that will raise the export value.
So what is the problem right now regarding the Vietnamese products and services? They're not really high quality?
Let's look at the solution. The solution would be to learn from what the Japanese and the Koreans have done in terms of quality and process. And they studied a guy named Deming, which is a lot more practical way to adopt quality. And so by producing higher quality, higher value, there's people, for example, in China, over 200 million Chinese that have money to burn, to spend on high quality. And they are, but not from Vietnam. So China is the capital of cheap. They don't want any more cheap products. They want quality products, and the market is right over there. Similarly, the United States imports something like $9 billion worth of high-quality Italian shoes, for example. And later on, you'll be able to show some examples of some of my students' work on developing brands for high-quality Italian-style shoes made in Vietnam to be sold in the U.S. So there's a great market for bigger market for quality goods than cheap goods. At the same time, it's very difficult to compete against China on the area of cheapness because all the infrastructure they have and just the size they have.
So make a lot of cheap products.
Well, the reason they're cheap is because they have the infrastructure to move them. They have their inputs from within the nation state of China, so that brings down the price, and then they have scale, a tremendous ability to scale. So the way to win is not to compete against China, but to compete against the G7, which is branding your products, high quality, branding your products, controlling your sales channels, and selling to the Chinese in the G7.
But what do you think are some reasons that Vietnamese companies haven't paid too much attention to increasing the quality of their products and services?
Well, you just said it. They haven't paid attention to it. So if they pay attention to it, then they'll get the result.
What are really the problem then? What is the barriers that, hold them back from, investing more into the quality of the product?
Well, let's look at the enablers. The enablers, or the solution to that, is the opposite of the problem, which is to look at the opportunity. If you want to increase the money that you make, you simply make a better product. And it squares well with Vietnamese culture, because Vietnamese have a way of producing artistic products like shoes, handmade, anything, with great love and attention, more so than the Chinese. So you can actually win the game of quality and beat the Italians on shoes, for example, instead of trying to beat the Chinese on shoes, because they're always going to be cheaper.
But then high qualities always come with high costs, correct?
Actually, the opposite is true. The higher quality brings down the total cost long-term lower.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, simply if you buy, let's say you buy a machine, and the machine's made in China, and it's cheap, and it breaks down, and you have to replace it. The replacement cost, and then if you're servicing your customers and the machine breaks and you can't service your customers, you lose business. It can go on and on. The effects can be compounding. So quality is really the most inexpensive solution in a longer term period.
All right. So the quality is necessary topics that we Vietnamese companies have to focus on now, right?
Well, it's a way to make more money for your exports. So if you increase the value of your exports, say 20 to 30% by making quality, then you don't have a trade imbalance, and the dong is a lot stronger and everyone's happier.
Then the next strategy would be branding.
Strategy number 2 is brand your own products.
All right.
And own your customer. In other words, control the channels that you sell through in the foreign markets. Selling directly, cutting out Mr. Singapore and cutting out Mr. Hong Kong.
You mean cutting out the middleman?
Exactly. In other words, it's a lot of value in the middle. If you look at Nike, you know, you could see that Vietnam gets like $15 or $16 for a pair of shoes, and out of that, 60% of the materials cost of that $16 has to be imported. So the net is very, very small, yet the shoes sell for $150 in the end markets. So why not make your own shoe, brand your own shoe, and sell directly into the markets that you're selling to, instead of relying on intermediaries. So the strategy is called, marketers call it disintermediation, which means cutting out the middle guy.
Well, I mean, how hard is it to, cutting out the middle guy when you depend on them so much nowadays?
Well, nothing is easy, including having a financial crisis. That's not easy either.
Yeah.
Having an imbalance of trade is not easy. So I would say that finding a new market and cutting out your current suppliers by inventing a new brand and inventing a new channel, you're not necessarily cutting them out. You can do both at the same time while you're building it. The G7 hopes you never learn, because that's how they make their money off of you. They send you a bunch of inputs, you make 20% of your export, and congratulations. Whereas if you own your own brand and you own your own customer, you can increase the export value over 200% just with that alone. And imagine that, the effect on the currency. Imagine that, the effect on the balance of trade, if you can increase exports a couple of 100%.
All right, we'll come back with that after a short break. Thank you, man. Vâng, thưa quý vị, vừa rồi là phần 1 của cuộc trò chuyện với giáo sư Soren Kirchner. Mời quý vị nghỉ lao trong ít phút trước khi quay trở lại với phần 2. Xin cảm ơn. Chào mừng quý vị quay trở lại với chương trình Tôi Việt Nam trên kênh FBNC cùng với cuộc trò chuyện cùng giáo sư Soren Kirchner. Hi Soren, welcome back.
Thanks.
So we've been talking about strategy for Vietnamese companies. What seems to be the decent selling strategy for Vietnamese company? Because I mean, there's no point of making a great products, a great quality, high quality products, but not knowing how to sell it, right?
We agree totally. That's a major challenge. And selling your products is what the G7 and foreigners have been doing for you for years, and they've gotten you to rely on them to do it for you. But there's a lot more money selling things and branding things than there is actually in making things. And that's sort of the secret they don't want you to know. And so if you can master the art and science of downstream vertical integration or controlling your business channels in the markets you're at, that's where the money is. That's where the value is. For example, the Nike shoe that sells $150, you get less than $10 net. Congratulations. So what they don't want you to know is that if you sell it yourself, you make more. And they want you to be convinced that you can't do it. You're not ready yet. You don't have enough money yet.
So it's the problem with the belief in yourself, right?
Well, if people don't believe that they can do it, then they're not going to be able to do it. And they have you convinced that you're not ready to do it. There's people coming in. I've listened to many foreign people who come from those top universities
Well, you mentioned owning distribution channels in foreign markets. Seems to be a very challenging job to do.
Well, everything is challenging. Nothing. I mean, having a currency that's not doing well and having a unbalance of trade and inflation, that's challenging too. So I have something that's an alternative, a solution to that, which is to increase the value of what you do export. And one way to do that is the quality, strategy number one. The other way to do it is strategy number two, own your brand and own your customer, which means selling directly, cutting out middle persons, and owning the customer yourself, or close as you possibly can. Right now, you're as far away as you possibly can be.
But then, in order to creating, like you said, owning a brand, what are some of the first steps the Vietnamese should do right now? The Vietnamese companies, I mean, they have a lack of resources, a lack of capital, a lack of human resources, low technology skills.
I don't know if that's true anymore. There's hundreds and maybe thousands of people coming back from the States and Europe and Australia with MBAs, educations. Already they're in the marketplace teaching and replacing guys like me, which is as it should be. And there's plenty of talent here. Let's talk about the money. I've had a lot of friends show me their money. Open the safe, look at all my money. There's plenty of money here. So that's a lot of baloney that we don't have the money to do it, and I don't buy it one bit. I think the intention is missing. The intention is missing because people have never had the intention, because they've never had their attention on. They just maybe never thought about it. Or when they were thought about it, they would ask people like, Harvard professors visiting, and they would say, no, you're not ready to do it yet, and they would believe them. But I just don't buy it one bit.
A lot of people believe that.
Well, that's a self-limiting belief.
Okay.
Belief is the starting point. The students at CIE, which I hope you'll show some of their clips, you can see that it is possible, and they are doing it without anyone's permission. They just decided to do it. So they're going to be launching in Texas and other places because they know that's where the opportunity is.
Talking about quality, somebody could say, okay, I'm just going to make a good product and not so bad quality. I can sell it first. I don't have to push, invest too much on the quality. I mean, the customer wouldn't know it anyway.
Yeah, well, the customers do know it because they return the products and they buy other people's products. And the customers do know it because they have to replace it, or they lose business because the machine doesn't work, or customers will find out. And of course, if you conform to international standards of quality, but that's not enough. You still got to make it the best. What if Vietnam became known for, hey, the products there are a little bit more expensive, but worth it?
Okay.
What if that was the reputation? Well, the only reason it's not the reputation is because no one intended it to be the reputation. Instead, it was like, well, what are the Chinese doing? Okay, they're doing cheap, cheap, let's copy that. Instead, we can do the opposite.